Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butchchester. You guys know who I am, and you know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to do your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on a fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time today with Sean Wilson of Dream.org, Dream Justice Cohort, a national leadership program equipping formerly incarcerated leaders to shape bipartisan criminal justice solutions. I know, awesome, right? So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Sean. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Now, I cannot wait to talk to you more about what you and your organization does. It sounds like just the perfect thing for us to talk about here during our series of Still We Rise, Still We Lead. But before we do that, I realize I might be introducing you to some folks out there that are unfamiliar with you and your work. So, first question for you is tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Oh, I love this question. Well, I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, born and raised. I would say at my core, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a community-centered leader who, believes deeply in my people, who believes deeply in people in general, especially, when people are still becoming. And that's what my work is about. It's about helping people see themselves beyond the moment and to build their lives rooted in purpose, right?
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And as someone who talks about walking in purpose, I could not agree with you more. Some people know a little early on. Some folks, it takes a little while for them to get there. But I figure as long as you get there, that's what's important so that you can definitely be on this journey that everyone has been called to be on. Now, speaking of being on a journey, sometimes we realize that life kind of throws us a curveball. For some folks, it has been they made a poor decision or they were with the wrong folks and bad turned into worse. For others, it could have even been like a medical condition, like I'm a breast cancer survivor. You never know what life is going to swing at you. With that being said, how do you help people deal with that step of coming home from a situation where they've been removed from their family for some time? That's a transition that you have to prepare for, as well as friends and family. What was that like in helping others?
I would say, I mean, again, going back to my initial statement, I believe in people, right? And I know that as humans, we are prone to indiscretion. And I know many people in our country and throughout the world have given in to indiscretion and find themselves in situations that they may have never thought that they would be in. And when they are in those situations, they're trying to figure out how to navigate those situations, right? And then oftentimes when they're transitioning out of those situations, they're trying to figure out how to navigate a new reality, a new world that has changed on them, that looks a little bit different than it did a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even longer. And
Mhm.
so, I truly believe in the power of investing in the leadership of other individuals, understanding that when you invest in the leadership of other individuals, they begin to recognize their agency. And when people recognize their agency, they begin to do incredible things and they begin to have an impact that they themselves never would have thought that they could have. as a result of them stepping into their leadership. And so I build leaders, and I build organizers. And I believe that leadership starts with responsibility, first to yourself, to your community, into the future that we're all shaping.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have spoken about healing as a turning point in one's journey. What does healing look like before leadership enters the picture? Now, of course, it looks different for everyone, but giving us a general idea or painting with a broad brush, how do you heal the self before you step into your leadership role?
I think you have to go through that journey. I think that if you don't
Mhm,
go on the journey of healing, I think you become an unhealed leader and you pass down harm, right?
yeah.
And so I think that it starts with accountability. It starts with acknowledging the harm that has impacted your life, and also understanding the harm that you have caused in other people's lives. And so
Mhm,
I think it comes from us understanding ourselves, right? I think that it comes in reflection, in care, in understanding that it's not about ego. It's about being urgent in addressing the things that has caused you to step outside of yourselves, to not stand on your square. And
mhm,
healing has taught me to, pause and to reflect um, on how I, respond to certain things. It taught me clarity. It didn't
mhm,
teach me softness, but it taught me to be clear on in my actions, be clear in my responses,
mhm,
um, and it also taught me responsibility.
mhm, mhm. And I love how you make the suggestion of making sure that you have that pause. Far too many times, putting on my pastoral counseling hat for this particular comment, that is where so many people kind of drop the ball. Is Dr. Angela, if I had just waited one more second, if I had not said that, or if I had not done that, if I had just paused and just taken a breath, I wouldn't be in this mess right now.
Hmm.
And you are so right. The pause is so important. We hear it all the time, take a breath, walk away, sleep on it, whatever you need to do, right? To give yourself, however you need to phrase it, to give yourself that permission to just not act in that moment. That is really wise with a lot of the things that we do. Now, I believe one of the things that you assist with or you help those that are utilizing your services is that you connect them with people that can help them with housing and employment and support because this isn't just about um, getting them ready for leadership, but it is also helping them along the healing process. And that is shaping them into their best version of themselves. I don't think most people can realize that when they've been in one place and now they're in another place ready to conquer the world again, but they're not sure where they're going to live or who's going to hire them. How do you support people that are looking for that type of support or have that type of need?
So here at dream.org, in our justice program, majority of our team is justice impacted, right? And you have this quote that is often stated by, impacted people, corporations, folks in the nonprofit industry, even in the funding industry, that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution, right? But furthest from the power and the resources. And this is a quote from Glenn Martin. And so we really believe here at dream.org that if we really want to get to the solution, then we have to get proximate to the people, and we have to get proximate to the problem to understand what solutions are viable for whatever it is that we're dealing with. And so my role is pretty much centered on developing individuals who have been impacted by systems. My role is organizing power. So change isn't just imagined, but it's actually won. And for the last 4.5 years here at this organization, we have been able to invest in the leadership of justice impacted individuals in communities who have been locked out, who have been forgotten. Um, we've been able to support them in building pathways to opportunity by giving them the tools and the resources that they need to be successful. And the reason why we have been able to be successful around this is because the people who are leading these efforts, the people who are building these efforts, are the very people who we are working to support in those who are navigating reintegration back into communities after a period of incarceration.
Mm-hmm. And it is so important with the social part of what you do. That is one of the big things if those who work in community building on whatever level, be it that it's faith-based or it's secular based, we hear so much about that, about just having those resources at every step of the way. And you'll be surprised at how many people are just without a particular piece, if not all of them, but a particular piece. And that's what's really keeping them from being themselves. Well, it is time for us to take a very short break. But before we do, if someone wants to reach out to you or follow you on social media, what is the best way to do that?
Folks can follow me at on my personal Instagram page at the Fire This Time. Sean Wilson at the Fire This Time on Instagram.
All righty. Everyone, now you know where you can go to follow. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark by Dr. Angela. You guys know who I am. My guest today is Sean Wilson, and he is a part of Dream.org, Dream Justice Cohort, a national leadership program equipping formerly incarcerated leaders to shape bipartisan criminal justice solutions. Let's jump back into our conversation. So, Sean, I love what Dream.org is doing, and it is definitely a needed organization to help people reintegrate, to settle back into themselves. Well, through the Justice Cohort, you guys are equipping formerly incarcerated leaders to shape real policy changes and solutions. Why is it important that those closest to the issue help lead the change? Why does that make a difference?
Um, Proximity again. Going back to the proximity piece. You can't expect um, people to have solutions when they are far removed from what is happening around them, right? In order for you to fully provide um, viable solutions, then you have to get proximate to the folks who are who are at the margins, right? And then we also believe that people are more than their worst moment, right? And so we want
Mhm.
to transform systems while by investing in people who understand those systems. And we understand that we just can't change policies. We have to continue to invest in people,
Mhm.
build people, and get them access to the things that they need to bring about that change.
Mhm, mhm. And you are really out there doing the work. I believe the website mentions that you recently addressed the United Nations on human-centered reentry. A human-centered approach. I love that phrasing, but I want to make sure that I give you time to really explain what that is, what that looks like in practice, and why is it important that that not just be a label, but a theory put in practice.
Yeah, so I mean that was a amazing opportunity to be able to speak at the United Nations in front of probably about 50, 60 countries on the
Wow.
importance of approaching social reintegration as they call it globally, but here in the States we call it reentry. But how do we approach it from a human rights lens and considering it a human right that when an individual come home from incarceration, that they should have at the basic, right? Uh, they should have access to housing, employment. They should have access to mental health treatment in healthcare. It has to be it reentry cannot be an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
It has to be obligation that we are supporting individuals who are returning back to their homes in their communities. The data says that 95% of people in prison will return back to their communities. And
Wow. Mhm.
successful reentry determines whether incarceration ends or if it continues in another form. And so, housing, employment, healthcare, um, family reunification, all of these are tied to dignity, right? All of these are important to a person's successful reintegration. They were important for my own successful reintegration. And when reentry fails, it's not solely an individual's failure, it's a system failure. And so we have to make sure that we are supporting those individuals and we are structuring a system that supports those individuals when they are returning home from that period of incarceration. And so I was grateful for the opportunity to share some of my insights around why this should be approached from a human rights lens. It's important that we understand that a person's sentence shouldn't end when a sentence ends,
Yeah.
that they continue they continue to navigate the challenges that they are going to encounter as a result of some of the labels that are placed upon them. And that's another thing that I had opportunity to speak to the UN about is the language that we use. The
Mhm.
language we use, it determines whether people are seen as human beings or permanent risks. So I was urging them to not use terms like offender or ex-convict. These are terms that reinforce exclusion. And we should be prioritizing person first language, people's first language, humanizing language that supports reintegration, public safety, and healing.
Yeah, as you were saying that, it made me just think about how I could imagine a family member whose loved one is going through this program and they're nodding their head saying, "Yes, they've done their time, let's let them now live. Let's try to be positive about this new stage that they are in." Because if it were your loved one, you would want someone to give them a chance. So I definitely love that you guys are trying to bring that human touch to this particular phase of their or stage in their lives.
Yes.
Now, your program it's not just where you are. This has grown into a national network of leaders that are creating impact. So it's not just in one place, much bigger than just one person, one voice, but now there are many voices, many leaders that are assisting. What has that meant to the organization as a whole? Um, is it leaps and bounds, or is it more kind of slowly like a slow and low fire that just continues to grow?
Yeah, it's a movement. And you're speaking about our empathy network. which is a national network of people. Many of them are directly impacted by the justice system. Some of them are just family, or not just, but some of them are family members, allies, and individuals who feel that the justice system needs to be changed, and they are committed to working to change this system and supporting individuals and organizations who are leading in that effort. And so we want to make sure that, we are continuing to train and support them. We, not only talk about empathy, but we lead with empathy. We understand that empathy is not a feeling, right? We understand that empathy is a practice. It's a leadership practice.
Mhm.
We understand that systems begin to change when people see each other as humans. And so I'm glad that dream.org focus on that investment in the network of people who are the most proximate to the issues in which we work on, because
Mhm.
we take our cue from them. We don't presume to know it all. We are a staff that consists of individuals who are directly impacted and are proximate to all of the issues that we are working on, from climate tech to criminal justice reform. And we understand what needs to happen to bring about these changes.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, for families or loved ones that are supporting someone about to come home, what do you wish that they understood most about the reentry journey? Now, I know that there's probably several things or numerous things that they need to be aware of, but if there's one thing that you want to make sure that they find out more about or make sure that they really lock in on, what would that one thing be?
I would say that, reentry, it doesn't begin at release. Um
Hmm.
and it doesn't end when someone comes home, right? This is a long-term transition that is often filled with uncertainty, right? Their loved ones are relearning autonomy. They're relearning their identity and belonging. And freedom, it takes time to learn. And so I would just say, the one thing that families should lock in on is just, patience.
Yeah.
Understanding that their loved one coming home doesn't mean that they are picking off where life left off.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I like that answer. This is a lifelong moment of being patient. I like that. Now, my last question for you, and that is, what message would you offer to someone listening who might feel defined by their past still? But they are really longing for a future that's filled with that purpose, that dignity, and that hope that you were talking about. What is your word of encouragement to them?
I love this question, and it's also a heavy question, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would say you're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to evolve without permission. Coming from a environment where you needed permission for everything, to shower, to
Mm,
use the restroom, to eat, to speak to your fellow human being, I would say you are allowed to evolve without permission. I would say, owning your past doesn't mean that you have to live in it. It means, that you should be learning from it and choosing differently and moving forward, right? Oftentimes, when I'm in communication with people, they never know that I've been incarcerated. And then when they hear that, I am formerly incarcerated, they tend to be shocked. I don't look
mhm,
like, someone who's been formerly incarcerated. And often my rebuttal is, what does someone look like that has been formerly incarcerated, right? What I want your listeners and the American public and anyone within the sound of
mhm,
my voice to understand is that we're all human beings, despite where we may reside, whether that is a cell or whether it's the confines of your home. We are all human beings, and that's how we should perceive everyone that we are encountering. And we should, you know, we should have that grace and we should have that empathy for those individuals.
You you are so right there. As you were sharing that, it made me think of this article that I came across that said, some of the greatest celebrity comebacks. And one of them was Robert Downey Jr. We might know him as Iron Man.
Yeah.
That before Iron Man, people would say, he was a bit of a mess. And then, he got his life back on track. And look at him now. Mr. Stark is doing an amazing job at really being this new person and this new version of himself. So you are so right there. But let's not glaze over that nugget. You don't need permission to evolve. I love it. You don't need the permission. That was awesome. That what a nugget right there. Sean Wilson, thank you so much for coming on and sharing about the great work that your organization is doing with our audience today. Thank you for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I would again just reemphasize that it's for your listeners, and I'll leave them with this. You are not defined by your past. You're shaped by what you choose to learn from it. And also to emphasize what I stated early in the program, that healing comes before leadership. And when we lead with care, real change is possible. And at dream.org, we're working every day to turn that belief into action. That as long as we're building leaders and changing policies, we're able to remind people that they are more than their worst moment.
I love it. I love it. Thank you again for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And listeners, thank you for spending some time with us here today as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with us. And I thank you for doing so. I hope that we have once again enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.